good morning, or good afternoon, depending upon where you are. We'd like to welcome you to the Changing Sceneries, Changing Roles, first of four webinars that we'll be producing on behalf of the Media Management Commission of FIAT IFTA. Thank you so much for coming in. It's been a long time since our last seminar in 2019 in Stockholm. For those who are new to this seminar, we've been doing this for well over 20 years. A lot has changed in those roles and sceneries. We wanted to pick up where we left off in 2019, which was looking at automation and curation and kind of future-proofing our content. And that leads us to the four seminars we have now, looking at the digital transformation that has kind of shaped our lives, along with something called COVID. So again, thank you for virtually joining us here. Just some quick introductions, then some housekeeping. So I'd like to introduce you to our panelists and presenters today. We have Christoph Bauer from ORF. We have Virginia Bazil-Gil and Iris Lopez from RTVE, and Danielle Tusoris from the University of Zaragoza, who also has been working with RTVE. Let's just get started. So I will introduce Christoph Bauer from ORF. He's a system administrator for the archives systems, and he is an expert, of course, but a senior expert for research and development. So welcome, Christoph, and I give you the floor.
Thank you very much, Elena. Welcome, everybody. From me, it is good afternoon. From Vienna, we have a lovely and sunny afternoon here. So you see what a sacrifice I'm doing here, holding now this presentation. I do hope that you all see my screen, and so let's start right away into it. It's all about mining and harvesting. And since I'm the first one to speak after 3 years, I would like to start with maybe some basics first before talking to you about the experience we had during the last years here at ORF. What is mining and what is harvesting? When you use Dr. Google and look around the net, you will find things like that data mining is a process of extracting and discovering patterns and so on and so forth, which is quite a good explanation you can read for yourself. On data harvesting, it depends on what source you are reading. One I found here, it's that data harvesting is the automated collection of information from online sources like services or databases. Summing up everything, we might be able to say that data mining is generating new data. I do know this is maybe a little crude approach, but let's stick to this. And data harvesting is collecting already existing data. You might say that even when we are do data mining, the data itself is existing in some way. But in harvesting, it simply means we don't change it a lot, which on the other side in data mining, we will have doing a lot of work before we can use the data. So those are the two things I want to speak about. I want to try to compare them a little bit and talk about the experience we had since you might know from my name that I'm a fan of harvesting, since Bauer is the German word for farmer. But on the other side, I work now for nearly 25 years also for doing data mining. So I have quite an experience in both things, and I enjoyed it a lot. And I want to exchange here now some of my findings. So let's do some basic comparison here about how between harvesting and mining. First, on harvesting, you might expect that data quality is high since the data is already existing. Someone already looked over it and tried to keep it in a good shape. In data quality, On the mining side, well, there is AI involved, and you know what I say about AI, it has nothing to do with artificial and nothing to do with intelligence. So there might be something, you already ran into some discussions about data quality coming from mining services. On the other side, harvesting means you need a very careful selection of the data source you're harvesting to keep the general goal of high data quality. On the mining side, on the other side, the thing that is coming out of data mining may not meet your expectations at all. On the harvesting side, it delivers only existing data. On the mining side, you might be able to collect some real new data. On the downwards, on the harvesting side, that this existing data totally depends on the quality of the work of others, other people, other communities, other whatsoever systems. The new data on the mining side, at least, gives you the feeling that it brings some new, fresh approaches. But from experience, I can tell you that sometimes misses the actual needs. Some question that always pops up: how much do I need to do adaptions? Adaptions from the technical side up to workflows, to the personnel you're running, training, whatsoever. Normally, I can say in harvesting, you might expect lower adaptation efforts than you do on the mining side. But this is more, let's say, like all the other things, quite a basic view on the things. So harvesting may run in already existing data landscapes and using or directly replacing existing workflows, while on the mining side, there is some heavy interaction between the mining services and the target systems necessary. Just think about all the feedback you need, especially during mining, on quality to retrain, for example, your mining services and so on and so forth. So it's a little bit more tricky here. On harvesting, you mostly hear that it's best on forward only, so nothing for, let's say, archive content. And that's right, you might have some unforeseen and also unwanted effects when you're using harvesting on total historical data. But once you know you're doing, also backwards harvesting brings some brilliant impact to your collection. One thing in mining I definitely have to add here as well. This is the high training efforts, at least partly for parts of the mining services, that are often forgotten, and some of the training sources used and also the methods used for training are quite unclear for systems you buy from the shelf. So you never know what it has been trained on, and you get a lot of information that once you lifted the lid, you find under it that there's no information at all. So this might be some tricky. On the other side, if you wanted to train it yourself, it's high effort at all. So let's see, when we're talking about mining and harvesting, what's meant, what can we do, what do we understand? On harvesting, I want to list here some of the data sources that might be used for harvesting. Maybe, for example, ORF is a television company. We are a public broadcaster, and so therefore we might use our playout planning systems, the editorial systems, the rights management system in our house, the production content management system, which holds a lot of data. We might also use external sources. I named here just the two, like Wikidata, GeoNames, but also, let's say, external services from other broadcasting companies. I just want to mention here, for example, the Normdatenbank from the German broadcasters ARD here. It's the standards database, and it's really a good source. On the mining side, I just want to bring up here a few of the services. Most of you already might know it, but since this is a bigger group, I just want to add this here. So you can do mining on audio, for example, via speech to text, speaker recognition, and a lot of others. The video itself by face recognition, object concept recognition, and a lot of more, even OCR, for example. And the textual information only. For example, the results from a speech-to-text service used earlier, where you get a transcript, and then over the transcript, for example, you can do some named entity recognition or named entity linking, summarization of the text, and a lot of things more. Hey, are we doing all this already at ORF? Kidding. No, unfortunately not. But I can give you a short overview what we are currently doing, what we are planning to do, and what we are no longer doing, or at least now no longer doing. First of all, on harvesting, we use it heavily with our playout planning system and editorial systems. Those are the systems used by the editorial groups for production and so on, for planning their productions. There are a lot of information in it, but not everything there is really, let's say, that structured. But I'll come back to that in a little bit later here. Then we also use, of course, our rights management and the production content management system. You see, I used here two different colors. I come to that a little bit later on, because from the rights management system and the production management system, you normally can use the data right as they are. From the other systems, you will need some really heavy adaptation, controlling, and things like that. Let's switch over to mining. We're doing speech to text, and we are quite successful here. And we're doing, let's say, the archive way. So we're doing also with real historical content here, and we are doing quite good with it. We also started doing speaker recognition, not because we wanted to do it, but our partners here in the mining services, we're doing most of them together with the ARD, the German broadcasters, and they started speaker recognition. So we also trained some, and this, well, let's face it, it nearly completely failed here. So we are back on the starting point, started reviewing a lot of things. Currently, we are not using it at ORF in a productive status. Named entity recognition and linking is currently in preparation. It works really nicely here. I'm also a member of the expert group mining in the ARD, and here named entity recognition and linking is prepared. And it's looking good, and I'm expecting it to be starting already this year, maybe already after the summer break. Last but not least, face recognition is in a very early test. Here, we want to avoid all the trouble we had with the speaker recognition. Therefore, some of the tests has been stopped, and maybe the complete approach to this technology will change. But to tell you more about this would take another half an hour at least. So therefore, I'm stopping here and give you this nice picture about the metadata structure in ORF, where it has a heavy relation to the archive. So you see a lot of things are going on here. I just want to point out this one here in the very middle, which is our main television database. On the other side, this is the audio database. And here, all the magic happens when we are doing data harvesting. So, for example, this is the editorial system we're using. This is the planning system we're using. And most of the data are transferred via a tool called BizTalk, where the data are extracted from the original systems and then handed over to our database. How this is done, I want to give you a few examples here. For example, how is data coming from our production content management system to the archive database? Since both of those databases are nearly, let's say, doing the same, the production content management system has his part where it prepares data to be used in productions and so on. So you have nearly the same data fields we have in our archive data system database, and therefore this interlinking, this harvesting, it was introduced as a planned service. From the beginning on, it was foreseen to have data exchange between those two systems. And therefore, this is running really smoothly, and nearly no data has to be changed in theory. In praxis, of course, we in the archive have quite a close look to the data that's coming from the production content management system, because let's face it, the colleagues working up there are have other things in focus than the proper data quality. And therefore, it's good that we look over this. We also have a direct access to the product content management system, and nearly 90% of the preparatory work before data harvesting is already done by ourselves in the production content management system. Another form of harvesting, as I said, is, for example, from the editorial system into our archive database. This is an introduced service, not a planned one. So from our daily work, we learned that there is a lot of data in the already existing editorial system we wanted to have in our archive system. So the first steps through the first years has been, you might know this wonderful tool called cut and paste. So you use this, thanks to Microsoft and whoever who invented it. It's working great. And you have, let's say, quite good intelligence behind this system, means the documentalist working in the archive who takes care that only appropriate data is transferred from the editorial system to the archive database. Once we wanted to have this automated, we had to introduce a whole bunch of rule sets how we can, let's say, filter and polish and make the data good enough to be used in our archive system. For example, the editorial system is used by some of my colleagues in the production department simply as a notepad. So they write down everything that comes to their mind. It's then in the system. They even, for example, took down the private cell phone numbers from interview partners, and they were then in the system. So these things can't go to our system. It would be a data security disaster as well. So therefore, we are using a lot of filtering, regularities, and so on to get rid of those things and get proper data. Of course, at the very end, there is always a colleague who has at least a short look over the data coming over, but currently the rule sets are working quite fine. Switching over to mining, as I said, we're using speech to text, and we're using on historical material. That's why I used here some black and white material as my example here. You know, I'm fond of black and white. You might know by my video here. So the using speech to text on old content in our database really boosted the accessibility. A lot of the old content, the metadata we have, let's say, from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and so on, they are proper metadata, but they are, well, there's never enough information about those old content. And once we using now the speech to text, we get a lot of fresh information on the content. which is now much easier to be used in research, especially because the audio transcripts give you a new layer where you have direct access into the content. So once you find that there's something is talking about this and that, you just click on the name or the town he mentions, and you're directly at that part in the video. It's much easier to have access here. A short example, one of my colleagues is in charge of doing this anniversary programs. 40 years of this wonderful program. We are now broadcasting for 40 years, and every 10 years you do an anniversary program. And every 10 years, you do have to say something new about this program, which is nearly impossible. Now, by introducing speech to text, a work that took him mostly about 2 months to have a 50 years anniversary, now only took him 2 days to get most of his work done. Of course, this is an extreme example, but it shows the potential that is here in this technology from a part you might not expect it. So soon to come, I said there will be named entity recognition and named entity linking. You see here by this wonderful XML, it's already working in the background. The APIs and so on are working perfectly, and we are just waiting to introduce it. There are a lot of other things cooking, as you see on the right end, but time is running out, so we'll come to an kind of an intimate result. What does data mining and harvesting mean for us at ORF? So data mining, summing out, it brings new data and new accessibility, definitely. But this is not a solution for everything. There might be things that are working perfectly, but other things are totally impossible for mining. So you definitely have to look at actual workflow, at actual use cases, and find your solution here. So it is, for the time being, not a solution where data quality is the key. So there is always a lot of blur in data from mining processes. Once you're aware of it, it's not a problem, but keep it in mind. So it's a great solution where low or no accessibility is currently your main obstacle. This will help you very much without a lot of work. It always works and runs in the background, and suddenly a lot of your content is accessible. Plus, on the data harvesting side, it brings reliable data, but for some sources, it's hard to implement, not on the technical side, but since data discipline is really hard to find outside of the archive, definitely, and also to call for. So we have to convince our generators of the data in our sources to collaborate here. And the best was to participate in them in the results. When you can convince them that the better they work, the better the data then is in the archive, and the easier it's for them to work on future programs. It's that a simple formula. Once you got them to them, things will get a lot better, as they did at ORF. So there would be now the Q&A, but this will be late in the program. So here I hand back to Elena, and looking forward to your Q&As later.